Make your mind obey you and conquer everything you want. Andrew Carnegie. There is a truth almost no one accepts. You are not fighting the world. You are fighting your own mind. And while your mind does not obey, nothing on the outside organizes itself. Andrew Carnegie understood this early. He was not born with power, not born rich, not born influential, not born into the right environment. But he mastered something most people never even try to master: his own mind. And he said something that sounds simple, but changes everything. The man who does not govern his own mind will be governed by circumstances. Most people live exactly like this. They wake up and immediately react to whatever appears. A message arrives, they react. A problem shows up, they react. Fear appears, they freeze. Difficulty comes, they lose motivation. This person is not living. They are being lived. They do not decide the day. The day decides them. But Carnegie took the opposite path. He realized that before conquering the external world, he had to make his mind obey. Because an undisciplined mind is like a wild horse. It takes you where it wants, not where you want. And the problem is, most people believe the mind is who they are. I'm anxious. I'm insecure. I'm just like this. I overthink. I can't control my thoughts. Carnegie would say, that is not identity. That is lack of command. The mind is a tool. But most people have become servants of their own tool. And here begins the decisive point. You do not conquer what you want by trying to control the world. You conquer by controlling how you respond to the world. Carnegie trained his mind to do 3 things that change any destiny: a not react automatically, a not be dominated by temporary emotion, a not obey weak thoughts. He knew a thought is not truth. It is just a mental stimulus. But when you do not govern the mind, every thought becomes an order. Fear appears, you stop. Doubt appears, you delay. Tiredness appears, you quit. Comparison appears, you feel smaller. You became an employee of your own thoughts. Carnegie became the boss. He created an internal principle that ruled everything. I do not act based on what I feel. I act based on what I decided. This completely changes a person's life, because feelings change every hour. Decisions change destiny. The mind will always try to choose the most comfortable path. Avoid discomfort. Avoid exposure. Avoid risk. Avoid pressure. But what you want to conquer lies exactly beyond those zones. So if your mind tells you to run, and you obey, you never arrive. Carnegie realized that those who master the mind do the opposite of the automatic impulse. They feel fear. They advance with strategy. They feel insecure. They prepare and act. They feel like quitting. They continue a little longer. They feel mental fatigue. They organize and keep going. He did not wait for the mind to be comfortable. He taught the mind who was in charge. And this is training. Because at first, the mind resists. It will say, do it later. It doesn't have to be now. This is hard. You're not ready. What if it goes wrong? Carnegie did not argue with these thoughts. He ignored them. Because arguing with fear strengthens fear. Acting despite it weakens it. He said the mind is like a muscle. If you don't use it to command, it uses you. And the first sign that you began mastering the mind is this: you do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. That is the point that separates dreamers from conquerors. Most people depend on motivation. Carnegie depended on decision. Motivation is emotional. Decision is structural. Motivation goes up and down. Decision remains. When your mind begins to obey you, something silent happens. You stop living by impulse. You start living by direction. You do not react to what you feel. You act according to what builds. And that generates something rare: consistency. Consistency is not intensity. It is controlled repetition. Carnegie was not explosive. He was constant. And consistency defeats disorganized talent. When your mind obeys you, you wake up and do what you decided. Finish what you started. Do not get distracted by everything. Do not change direction at every difficulty. Do not abandon the plan halfway. This creates internal authority. You begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, the world starts to trust you too. Because your posture changes. Your communication changes. Your eyes change. Your behavior changes. You stop looking like someone who is trying. You start looking like someone who builds. And that is power. But here is the deep point. Mastering the mind is not becoming cold. It is becoming conscious. It is not about not feeling fear. It is about not letting fear decide. It is not about eliminating doubt. It is about not giving power to doubt. Carnegie said the mind will always create noise. Thoughts will appear. Fears will arise. Insecurities will try to enter. But you are not the thought. You are the one who decides if it becomes action. And the moment your mind begins to obey you is the moment your life begins to change levels. Not because the world got easier, but because you got stronger. Most people wait for life to improve to act better. Carnegie acted better, and life improved as a consequence. He did not ask, "How do I make everything go right?" He asked, "How do I become someone who makes things go right?" And that begins with mastering the mind. Because an undisciplined mind destroys opportunities. A trained mind creates opportunities. And here is the final truth of this first part. You do not conquer what you want when the world changes. You conquer when your mind stops sabotaging you. When it stops telling you to stop. When it stops justifying weakness. When it stops inventing excuses. When it stops seeking comfort before construction. At that moment, you do not become someone else. You become someone in command. And when you are in command, life begins to obey. The biggest mistake people make is not having an undisciplined mind. It's believing it will discipline itself. It won't. Your mind has been trained for years to seek comfort, avoid pain, and react automatically. It learned to obey impulses, not decisions. So when you decide to change your life, it creates conflict. You decide to wake up earlier. The mind says, "Just not today." You decide to study. It says, "You can do it later." You decide to stop procrastinating. It says, "You're already tired." This is not a willpower problem. It is a command problem. Carnegie treated the mind like a subordinate, not as a friend, not as an enemy, but as something that needs direction. He did not ask the mind what it wanted to do. He told it what would be done. And this starts with a simple and powerful principle. You do not negotiate with what you have already decided. Most people decide and then negotiate. Today I won't. Just this once. I'll make up for it tomorrow. Every negotiation weakens your internal authority. And when your mind realizes you don't stand by your decisions, it stops respecting you. Carnegie understood that internal respect is built through consistency. Every time you do what you promised yourself, even without feeling like it, your mind registers. He speaks and acts. That builds internal strength. But every time you give in to impulse, it registers. He speaks, but doesn't follow through. That builds internal weakness. And internal weakness is the root of self-sabotage. That's why mastering the mind doesn't begin with big changes. It begins with small orders kept. You decide something simple, and you follow through. Even if no one sees, even if it seems like nothing big. Because it's not about the size of the action. It's about command training. Carnegie used conscious repetition as a tool. He understood the mind learns through patterns. If you repeat delay, it learns to delay. If you repeat quitting, it learns to quit. If you repeat discipline, it learns to obey. And here comes a crucial point. The mind does not understand promises. It understands repeated behavior. You can say 1,000 times you're going to change. But if the pattern stays the same, the mind believes the pattern. That's why Carnegie didn't trust motivation. He trusted systems. He created structures that reduced the mind's chance to escape. Organized environment. Defined schedules. Decisions made before emotion arrived. Because he knew that if he waited to decide in the moment of impulse, the mind would choose the easiest path. And the easy path almost never leads to what you want to conquer. The mind always seeks immediate pleasure. quick relief, comfort now. But conquest comes from sustained discomfort, repetition without applause, effort that isn't exciting. So if you don't train the mind, it pulls you toward the immediate and away from what builds. Carnegie said most people live dominated by invisible impulses. They think they are choosing, but they are reacting. Someone criticizes, they react. Something fails, they lose motivation. They feel fear, they freeze. That person is not free. They are driven by stimuli. Mastering the mind is regaining the freedom to choose your response. And that requires pause. Carnegie trained something few people do, interrupting the impulse. When a negative thought appeared, he did not follow it automatically. He stopped, observed, and decided, does this strengthen me or weaken me? If it weakened him, he didn't feed it. Because a thought that is fed becomes emotion. Emotion that is fed becomes behavior. Repeated behavior becomes destiny. He cut the process at the beginning. That is awareness. It's not eliminating thoughts. It's choosing which ones receive energy. Most people don't realize they give energy to what destroys them. They replay mistakes in their mind, replay fears, replay insecurities. And the mind understands this is important, so it amplifies it. Carnegie did the opposite. He reinforced thoughts of construction, direction, possibility, solution, action, not because he was naively optimistic, but because he knew the mind works on what it is fed, and focus is an order. Another fundamental point, your body obeys your mind, but your mind also obeys your body. Carnegie took care of posture, the way he walked, the way he spoke, because he knew external behavior influences mental state. Weak posture creates a weak mind. Firm posture creates a firm mind. Most people wait to feel strong to act strong. He acted strong, and the mind followed. This creates a cycle of authority. You begin to act like someone in control. The mind adjusts to the pattern. You feel more capable. You act even better. That is how internal command grows. But here is the point that changes everything. The mind tests you before it obeys you. It resists, creates excuses, generates mental fatigue, brings thoughts of doubt. That does not mean you are failing. It means you are training. Mental discomfort is a sign of growing command. Carnegie knew internal resistance appears before transformation. Most people stop at this point. He continued, and after enough repetition, something changes. What was difficult becomes natural. What required effort becomes pattern. What required force becomes identity. You no longer have to fight to act. You simply act. That is the moment your mind has begun to obey you. And when that happens, external achievements begin to look like a consequence. Not because it became easy, but because you stop being the obstacle. Now we enter the part almost no one sees. The place where the mind sabotages in silence. Because the biggest problem is not when you know you are afraid. It's when you think you are being rational, but you are actually being limited. The sabotaging mind does not show up shouting. It shows up disguised as logic. It's not the right time. I need to prepare more. I'll start later. Now isn't good. This sounds like prudence. But many times it's protection of comfort. Carnegie observed that the mind creates elegant justifications to keep you small. It doesn't say, stay mediocre. It says, wait for the perfect moment. But the perfect moment does not exist. What exists is imperfect growth. The sabotaging mind has three main weapons. One, amplification of risk. It makes the possible seem dangerous. A conversation becomes conflict. An attempt becomes failure. A change becomes loss. Carnegie trained the opposite. He mentally reduced the risk and increased his capability. He would ask, what is the worst realistic scenario, and would I survive it? Most of the time, the answer was yes, and that dismantled the fear. 2. Minimization of your ability. It makes you forget what you've already overcome. You solve difficult problems, but the mind says it was luck. You grow. It says it was chance. You learn. It says it's still not enough. This keeps you dependent on external validation. Carnegie practiced a simple exercise. He recorded internal victories, not to boast, but to remind his own mind. I've done hard things before. This builds self-confidence based on evidence, not emotion. 3. Focus on immediate discomfort. The mind hates effort without quick reward. It wants pleasure now, relief now. But every achievement requires a period where you work without seeing results. The mind interprets that as it's not working. Carnegie understood that the process is invisible before it becomes visible. He trusted direction, not the feeling of the moment. Most people stop because they want to feel that it's working. Those who win continue even without feeling it. Here comes a decisive principle. You do not obey your feelings. Your feelings learn to obey you. If you act only when motivated, the mind controls you. If you act because you decided, the mind adjusts. Feeling follows repeated action. Discipline does not kill emotions. It reorganizes them. Another point Carnegie mastered. Environment shapes the mind. You can try to be mentally strong, but if you live surrounded by distraction, negativity, and chaos, the mind weakens. He carefully chose who he spoke with, what he consumed, where he spent his energy, because he knew the mind absorbs patterns from the environment. If you constantly hear complaints, your mind complains. If you constantly see comparison, your mind compares. If you stay focused on building, your mind builds. Mastering the mind also means filtering what enters it. But here is the ultimate turning point. The mind truly begins to obey when you stop seeing yourself as someone trying to change and start seeing yourself as someone who has already decided who they are. Carnegie did not say, "I'm trying to be disciplined." He said, "I am disciplined." This seems like a small detail, but identity changes behavior. Someone who sees themselves as strong acts strong. Someone who sees themselves as someone who always fails acts insecure. The mind seeks coherence with your identity. So if you say internally, "I am someone who does what I decide," you create a pattern the mind tries to sustain. That's why repeating small decisions is so powerful. They build identity, and identity sustains results when motivation fails. Carnegie understood the battle was not against the world. It was against the internal mental state. When he mastered his mind, the world became simpler. Problems became decisions. Fears became data. Criticism became information. Failures became adjustments. An obedient mind turns chaos into process. And here is the final truth of this part. You do not conquer what you want when the world improves. You conquer when your mind stops being the obstacle. The world will always have difficulties. It will always have uncertainty. It will always have risk. But when your mind is under command, none of that paralyzes you. And that is when things begin to work more often. Not because life became easier, but because you became stable inside. And mental stability is the soil where achievements grow. Perfect. Now we move to what truly turns all of this into daily practice. The training of the mind. Because understanding is easy. What's hard is reprogramming a mental pattern that has existed for years. Andrew Carnegie did not trust bursts of motivation. He trusted conditioning. The mind is like an invisible muscle. If you don't train it, it returns to its automatic pattern. So here is what would be Carnegie's daily method to make the mind obey. Small blue diamond step 1. Command the mind before the world speaks to you. The biggest mistake people make is waking up and letting the day take control of their mind. They grab their phone. They see news. They read messages. Problems enter before direction. And the mind starts the day reacting. Carnegie did the opposite. Before any external influence, he defined his mental state. He asked himself, who do I need to be today, regardless of what happens? Not what he wanted the day to bring, but who he would choose to be. Calm, decisive, strategic, focused. This creates internal direction before external pressure. Whoever starts the day without command lives the day under the world's command. Small blue diamond step 2. Lower the volume of the reactive mind. The mind talks all the time, but not everything it says is true. Carnegie realized that much of our thinking is repetition of old fear, not current reality. He did something powerful. He observed the thought without obeying it. Thought, this could go wrong. Internal response, maybe. And I moved forward anyway. Thought, you're not ready. Response, ready or not, I advance. He didn't argue with the mind. He didn't submit to it. Thoughts lose power when they stop governing decisions. Small blue diamond, step 3, act before emotion authorizes. This is the turning point. Most people wait to feel like doing something. Carnegie acted from decision. He knew the mind learns through repeated behavior, not emotion. You don't wake up disciplined. You become disciplined by acting like someone disciplined. Action creates identity. Identity creates mental pattern. You train the mind by saying, whether I feel like it or not, I do it. After weeks of doing this, the mind stops resisting. Small blue diamond, step 4, train the mind to tolerate discomfort. The mind wants quick pleasure. But growth lives on the other side of discomfort. Carnegie intentionally exposed himself to difficult situations, conversations he avoided, decisions that created fear, bigger responsibilities, environments that demanded more. He did this not out of recklessness, but to teach the mind. I can handle this. Each time you face something difficult, the mind records. That wasn't fatal. I can deal with it. This reduces future fear. Small blue diamond, step 5, repeat the identity you chose. The mind seeks coherence. If you repeatedly say to yourself, I am someone who does what I decide. I am someone who continues. I am someone who acts with clarity, and then act accordingly, you build identity. A strong identity reduces self-sabotage. You stop asking yourself if you're going to do it. You simply do, because it's who you are. Small blue diamond, step 6, protect the mind as if it were an asset. Carnegie filtered what entered his mind. He avoided constant complaining, excessive comparison, repeated negativity, chaotic environments. Because he knew a mind overexposed to noise loses clarity. You don't build focus by consuming distraction all day. Mastering the mind also means choosing what it listens to. Small blue diamond, step 7, in the day in command, not in guilt. At night, he didn't ask, did everything go right? He asked, was I who I decided to be today? If yes, he slept with peace. If not, he adjusted for the next day. No drama. No excessive guilt. Only adjustment. The mind improves through awareness, not punishment. Fire the result of this training. After weeks, something changes. You notice that you don't react to everything. Don't freeze in fear. Don't need motivation to act. Don't fall apart when problems arise. Don't waste energy on distractions. This is a mind under command. And when the mind obeys, your actions become consistent. And consistent actions produce consistent results. This is where the final sentence makes sense. You don't achieve everything you want when life becomes easier. You achieve it when your mind learns to obey your decisions. And when that happens, it seems like the world started to cooperate. But in truth, you simply got out of your own way. There is a massive difference between wanting to achieve something and having a mind capable of sustaining it. Most people spend their lives trying to control the world. Carnegie learned to control the only place that truly decides everything, the mind. Because the mind decides if you start. The mind decides if you continue. The mind decides if you quit. The mind turns difficulty into learning or into excuses. While your mind commands you, your life moves in circles. You promise and break it. You decide and go back on it. You start and stop. This creates a dangerous pattern. Your mind learns that your own decisions are not trustworthy. And when you don't trust yourself, you freeze. Andrew Carnegie broke this cycle with something simple yet powerful. He trained the mind to obey through repetition of internal integrity. It wasn't brute force. It was daily coherence. Small decisions kept. Small actions done even without desire. Small resistances overcome. Each time he did what he decided, the mind recorded. He does what he says. This builds something invisible, yet decisive, internal authority. And when you have authority over yourself, you don't have to fight to act. You don't negotiate with procrastination. You don't freeze in discomfort. You don't sabotage yourself when things begin to grow. Your mind stops being an obstacle. It becomes an ally. And here comes the shift most people never experience. You no longer depend on motivation. You no longer depend on inspiration. You no longer depend on perfect conditions. You act because you decided who you are. An identity sustains action when emotion fails. That is why Carnegie would say mastering the mind is the foundation of any achievement. It's not about empty positive thinking. It's about mental discipline. It's choosing your response instead of reacting automatically. It's continuing when no one sees results. It's becoming stable inside. When this happens, something changes quietly. Problems stop knocking you down. Failures stop defining you. Difficulties stop paralyzing you. Fear loses power. And you begin to realize that what once seemed impossible was simply you against your own mind. The world did not get easier. You became stronger. And when the mind stops resisting, your energy is no longer spent fighting yourself. It's used to build. And then life starts to respond. Not by magic, not by luck, but because your decisions gain consistency. Consistency turns into results. Results create real confidence. Real confidence opens space for bigger challenges. And bigger challenges bring greater achievements. Everything begins where almost no one wants to work inside. Andrew Carnegie would end with something simple. You don't achieve everything you want when the world changes. You achieve when your mind learns to follow your decision, not your fear. When that happens, you stop asking for strength. You become strong. And from that point on, what you call destiny is simply the reflection of the mental pattern you built. No noise, no announcements, just daily construction. And that is how you achieve everything that truly matters.